The first sign that my life was about to crash harder than a Windows 95 machine wasn't the late-night giggles from Tessa's phone. It wasn't even the way she'd started placing it face down during dinner, like some kind of digital poker hand she didn't want me to see. No, the real warning came when I realized I'd been troubleshooting my marriage more than the servers at work, and that's saying something because our network infrastructure was held together with duct tape and prayers. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Owen Hale, and I'm a network engineer for a mid-sized tech company in suburban Phoenix. 34 years old, moderately successful, and apparently as exciting as watching defragmentation run on a hard drive from 2003. At least, that's what my wife Tessa's group chat seemed to think, based on the notifications I'd been accidentally seeing pop up on our shared tablet. "Owen, you're doing that thing again," Tessa said, not looking up from her phone as she scrolled through what appeared to be an endless stream of messages. Her auburn hair caught the kitchen light as she shook her head in that way that used to be endearing, but now felt condescending. "What thing?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. I'd been staring at her phone like it was a server log I needed to decrypt. That creepy IT guy stare, like you're trying to hack into my personal space. I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Just wondering who's got you so entertained at 9:30 on a Tuesday night?" "Just the girls from work. You know how it is." She finally looked up, her green eyes doing that thing where they went wide and innocent, like she was surprised I'd even ask. "HR drama. Very boring." Tessa worked as an HR coordinator at a marketing firm downtown. She'd always been the social one in our relationship, the one who remembered birthdays and organized dinner parties and somehow made small talk seem effortless. I was the guy who showed up, made awkward jokes about network topology, and counted the minutes until I could go home and work on my latest server configuration. But lately, those work conversations seemed to happen a lot, and they involved a lot of giggling. "Must be some pretty funny drama," I said, opening the refrigerator to grab a beer. "You've been laughing at your phone for 2 hours straight." "Oh, you know Leah. She's got stories about everyone." Tessa's phone buzzed again, and her attention snapped back to it like a magnet. This new guy in accounting tried to ask out 3 different women in 1 week. The audacity. I popped open my beer and watched her fingers fly across the screen. Whatever she was typing, it was long and involved a lot of emoji. The kind of detailed response you give when you're really invested in a conversation. "Which new guy?" I asked casually. "What?" She looked up, blinking like she'd forgotten I was there. "The new guy in accounting. What's his name?" "Oh, She paused, her thumb hovering over the screen. "I don't think you'd know him, just some random guy. But here's the thing about being a network engineer. You develop a nose for when something doesn't add up. When a system starts acting weird, you don't just ignore the symptoms and hope it fixes itself. You dig deeper, you check the logs, you trace the connections, and Tessa's behavior had been throwing error messages for weeks. It started small. The phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room, the new workout routine that had her leaving the house at odd hours, the way she'd started dressing up for work like she was going to a job interview instead of sitting in a cubicle reviewing employee handbooks. Then there were the technical tells that she didn't even realize she was giving me. Our smart home system logged when devices connected and disconnected from the network. Her phone had been pinging the Wi-Fi at strange hours, like she was coming and going when she thought I was asleep. Her smartwatch, synced to the same Apple ID, had been tracking trips to parts of town she'd never mentioned visiting. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'd reached that point in a relationship where you either confront the problem or start gathering data. And as a guy whose job involves solving problems through systematic analysis, I chose data. The next morning, after Tessa left for work in an outfit that seemed more appropriate for a date than a day at the office, I sat down with our shared iPad. We'd set it up years ago to sync our calendars and photos, back when we were the kind of couple who wanted to share everything. Now it felt like a window into a life I wasn't part of. The messages were all there. Months of them. Not just with her work friends, but with someone named Liam. And these weren't the kind of messages you send to a casual acquaintance. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Owen's working late again, so we'll have plenty of time." Last night was incredible. I forgot how good it could feel to be with someone who actually pays attention to me. "He's so clueless. I could probably bring you home for dinner and he'd just ask if you wanted to see his latest server setup." I sat there in my kitchen, staring at my wife's words on the screen, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was something more analytical. The satisfaction of finally identifying the source of a system failure. I scrolled back through weeks of messages, taking screenshots, saving evidence. Liam wasn't just some random guy. He was Tessa's ex-boyfriend from college, the one she'd dated for 3 years before we met, the one she'd always described as too immature and not ready for commitment. Apparently, he'd gotten married 2 years ago, had a wife named Sandra and a house in Scottsdale. But that hadn't stopped him from reconnecting with Tessa at some work conference 6 months ago. The messages painted a picture I'd been too trusting or too stupid to see. Hotel meetings during her late work nights, lunch dates during her extended breaks. A whole relationship happening in parallel to our marriage, complete with inside jokes and future plans and detailed critiques of my personality. He's like living with a tech support ticket that never gets resolved, one message read. All problems, no passion. Another. Liam gets me in ways Owen never could. When I talk, he actually listens instead of thinking about routers or whatever. And my personal favorite? Sometimes I think I married my IT department instead of a husband. I closed the iPad and sat in the silence of our kitchen, surrounded by the smart home gadgets I'd installed to make our life more convenient. The automated coffee maker I'd programmed to start brewing at exactly 6:30 a.m. The smart thermostat that learned our schedules and adjusted the temperature accordingly. The security system that tracked every door and window, all of it designed to create the perfect environment for a marriage that had apparently been failing for months. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Jace, who worked in tech support at my company. Server room's having a meltdown? Need you to come in early? I looked around the kitchen one more time, at the coffee mug Tessa had left in the sink, at her work schedule still pinned to the refrigerator, at the life we'd built together that suddenly felt like an elaborate facade. On my way, I texted back. But as I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I wasn't thinking about servers or network failures or any of the technical problems that usually occupied my mind. I was thinking about something Tessa had written in one of her messages to Liam. Owen's the kind of guy who thinks every problem can be solved with the right configuration. He has no idea that some systems are just incompatible. She was wrong about that. I knew exactly how to handle incompatible systems. You isolate them, you document the failure, and then you implement a solution that ensures the problem never happens again. The thing about working in IT is that you learn to expect the unexpected. Servers crash at the worst possible moments. Users delete critical files right before major presentations. Network cables get chewed by mice, literally bringing down entire departments because someone decided to store equipment next to the building's loading dock. But nothing had prepared me for the systematic failure of my marriage. I spent the morning at work running diagnostics on a server that kept randomly rebooting, which felt like a metaphor for my entire life. Every time I thought I had the problem identified, another error would surface. Just like every time I thought Tessa and I were getting back on track, I'd discover another layer of deception. You look like someone who's been staring at blue screens all night, Jace said, rolling his chair over to my workstation. He was one of those guys who somehow made tech support look effortless, probably because he treated every user crisis like a puzzle to solve rather than an annoyance to endure. Something like that, I said, not looking up from the diagnostic log scrolling across my screen. How long have you been married, Jace? 4 years next month. Why? Ever get the feeling your wife is running background processes you don't know about? Jace laughed. Man, that's either the nerdiest way to describe marriage problems I've ever heard, or you're having actual technical issues with your smart home setup. Maybe both. I could have told him everything right then. Jace was the kind of friend who'd listen without judgment and probably offer to help me key Liam's car or something equally therapeutic, but ultimately stupid. But I wasn't ready for advice or sympathy or any of the messy emotional support that normal people seem to need during relationship crises. I was ready for data. During my lunch break, I drove home and spent an hour going through our shared digital life with the methodical precision I usually reserved for network security audits. Cloud storage accounts, social media activity, location data from her phone, all of it painting a picture of a woman who'd been living a double life with impressive attention to detail. Tessa had been careful, but not careful enough. She'd deleted messages from her phone but forgotten about the backup copies in her email. She'd used private browsing for her hotel searches but left the confirmation emails in her spam folder. She'd told me she was working late, but her fitness tracker showed she'd been getting her steps in at a shopping mall across town. The most damning evidence came from her work calendar, which she'd shared with me years ago so I could plan around her schedule. Those client meetings and team-building exercises that had been taking up more and more of her evenings, they lined up perfectly with Liam's own calendar, which I found through his LinkedIn profile and a little creative social media stalking. By the time I drove back to work, I had a timeline that would have made a forensic accountant proud. 6 months of deception, documented down to the minute. My phone rang as I was pulling into the parking garage. Tessa's name appeared on the screen, along with a photo from our honeymoon in Sedona. We looked happy in that picture, naive but happy. "Hey," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Owen, I need to ask you something." She sounded different, nervous maybe. "Have you been messing with our shared accounts?" "What do you mean?" "The iPad keeps showing weird notifications, and I got a security alert about someone accessing my email." I felt a cold smile spread across my face. "Probably just a system glitch. You know how Apple devices can be when they're syncing across multiple platforms. Can you look at it when you get home? It's making me paranoid." "Sure thing. I'll run a full diagnostic." There was a pause. "You're being weird, Owen." "Weird how?" "I don't know. You sound different, like you're reading from a script or something." "Just focused on work stuff. We're dealing with a major system failure today." "Oh." Relief crept into her voice. "Okay, well, I'll probably be late tonight. We're having drinks for Jennifer's birthday." Jennifer. I'd met Jennifer exactly once, at a company holiday party 2 years ago. She'd seemed nice enough, but I was pretty sure her birthday was in March. It was currently October. "Sounds fun," I said. "Tell Jennifer I said happy birthday." "I will. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and sat in my car for a few minutes, watching other people walk into the building, carrying their coffee cups and their normal problems. Part of me envied them. Their biggest worry was probably whether the printer on the 3rd floor was working or if the cafeteria was serving that soup they liked. My biggest worry was figuring out how to systematically dismantle the life of the woman I'd been married to for 7 years. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of routine maintenance and user support tickets. But underneath the normal rhythm of work, I was planning. Not revenge, exactly. That implied emotion, anger, the kind of messy human response that led to restraining orders and criminal charges. This was going to be more like a controlled demolition, precise, thorough, and devastating. The first step was reconnaissance. I needed to know more about Liam, about his life, his vulnerabilities, his pressure points. Tessa had given me some information in her messages, but I needed a complete picture. Liam Brenner, 36, sales manager at a competing tech firm. Married to Sandra, a dental hygienist who posted frequently on social media about their perfect suburban life. 2 dogs, a mortgage on a house that was probably worth more than they could afford, and a husband who was apparently willing to throw it all away for afternoon hotel sessions with his college girlfriend. His LinkedIn profile showed a guy who took himself very seriously. Professional headshots, posts about disrupting the sales paradigm, and a long list of achievements that read like someone trying too hard to impress people who weren't paying attention. His Facebook was more interesting. Photos from business conferences that lined up with Tessa's work trips, check-ins at restaurants I recognized from her credit card statements, and comments on posts that showed a pattern of behavior that suggested this wasn't his first extramarital adventure. By the time I drove home that evening, I had a comprehensive profile of the man who was sleeping with my wife. His schedule, his habits, his social media patterns, even his coffee preferences based on his Instagram posts. Tessa's car wasn't in the driveway when I pulled up. Jennifer's birthday celebration, apparently. I used my phone to check the location sharing we'd set up for safety. She was at a hotel bar downtown, the same hotel where she'd been meeting Liam. I went inside and poured myself a scotch. Then I sat down at my computer and began drafting what I thought of as my implementation plan. The beauty of a good IT solution is that it addresses multiple problems simultaneously. You don't just fix the immediate issue, you create systems that prevent similar problems in the future. You document everything so that anyone who comes after you can understand what went wrong and why your solution works. I was going to apply the same methodology to my marriage. Step 1. Complete data collection and verification. Step 2. Identify all affected systems and stakeholders. Step 3. Develop a comprehensive remediation strategy. Step 4. Execute the plan with precision and documentation. Step 5. Verify successful resolution and implement monitoring to prevent recurrence. It was almost midnight when Tessa came home. I heard her car in the driveway, then the sound of her heels on the front steps. She was trying to be quiet, but our hardwood floors amplified every footstep. "Owen?" she called softly. "You awake?" "In the office," I replied. She appeared in the doorway, still dressed for her fake birthday celebration. Her makeup was smudged, and her hair looked like she'd been running her fingers through it. Or someone else had. "How was Jennifer's party?" I asked without turning around from my computer. "Oh, you know, same old work drama. Jennifer got a little too drunk and started complaining about her ex-husband again." Sounds exhausting. It was. She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "What are you working on?" "Just some documentation. making sure all our systems are properly secured. She kissed the top of my head, a gesture that once would have made me smile. Now it felt like a Judas kiss. "Don't stay up too late," she said. "I'm going to take a shower and head to bed." After she left, I opened a new document and began typing. Network Security Assessment, Hale Household Systems, date October 15th, conducted by Owen Hale, Network Administrator. Purpose, comprehensive analysis of security vulnerabilities and implementation of corrective measures. Then I started writing down everything I knew, everything I'd discovered, and everything I planned to do about it. By the time I finished, it was 3 a.m, and I had a 20-page document that read like a technical manual for destroying someone's life. I saved it to an encrypted drive and went to bed, where Tessa was sleeping peacefully, her phone charging on the nightstand beside her. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd start implementing Phase 1. The next morning, I gave Tessa a choice. Not an ultimatum. Those were messy, emotional things that left room for negotiation and false promises. This was more like a service-level agreement. Clear terms, defined consequences, and a reasonable time frame for resolution. "I know about Liam," I said over coffee, as casually as if I were mentioning the weather forecast. Tessa's hand froze halfway to her mouth, the coffee mug suspended in midair like a glitched animation. For about 3 seconds, I watched her brain cycle through the standard responses: deny, deflect, counterattack, minimize. She went with denial first. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Liam Brenner, sales manager at TechFlow Solutions, married to Sandra. You've been meeting him at the Marriott downtown for the past 6 months." The coffee mug came down hard on the granite countertop, sending a small splash across the surface. "Owen, I think you're confused about something. Room 412, last Tuesday. Room 318 the week before that. You paid for the first one, he paid for the second. You split the cost on the third, which is actually kind of sweet in a pathetic way." Her face went through several color changes, settling on a pale shade that matched our kitchen cabinets. "Have you been spying on me?" "I've been troubleshooting our marriage, and I found the problem." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the tile floor. "This is insane, Owen. You can't just accuse me of—" "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm stating facts based on documented evidence." I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd created. "Would you like to see the receipts? The text messages, the location data?" "You went through my phone?" "I went through our shared accounts. You know, the ones we set up so we could be transparent with each other. Turns out they work exactly as designed." Tessa sank back into her chair, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She looked like someone who just realized she'd been caught in a lie by a system she'd forgotten was monitoring her. "Owen, let me explain." "Here's what's going to happen," I interrupted. "You have 24 hours to decide what you want to do. You can end it with Liam and we can try to work through this, or you can pack your things and move out. But the sneaking around stops today." "You can't just give me an ultimatum." "It's not an ultimatum. It's a timeline for implementation of corrective measures." She stared at me like I'd started speaking in code, which in a way I had. "What happened to you?" she asked. "You're talking like a robot." "I'm talking like someone who's tired of running diagnostics on a system that's been compromised." "I'm not a system, Owen. I'm your wife." "Then act like it." I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and put it in the dishwasher. Normal morning routine, except for the part where I just detonated our marriage with the emotional equivalent of a controlled explosion. 24 hours, I said, grabbing my keys. After that, I start implementing alternative solutions. I left her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her, which technically it had. At work, I threw myself into a server migration project that had been sitting on my desk for weeks. There's something therapeutic about moving data from one system to another, ensuring everything transfers cleanly and nothing gets corrupted in the process. It requires patience, attention to detail, and the ability to anticipate problems before they happen. All skills I was going to need for what came next. Around lunchtime, Jace rolled over to my desk with a sandwich and a concerned expression. "Okay, what's going on with you today? You've been typing like you're trying to murder your keyboard." "Just focused," I said, not looking up from my screen. "This is about your wife, isn't it? The background processes thing you mentioned yesterday?" I saved my work and turned to face him. Jace had been my friend for 5 years, ever since he'd started working here. He was the kind of guy who remembered your birthday, brought donuts on Fridays, and somehow made even the most frustrated users feel better about their technical problems. He was also divorced, which made him uniquely qualified to understand what I was going through. "She's been having an affair," I said. 6 months, maybe longer. Shit, man, I'm sorry. He set down his sandwich and gave me the kind of look people reserve for friends who've just been diagnosed with something terminal. What are you going to do? I gave her a timeline to choose, me or him. And? She laughed. That wasn't entirely true. Tessa had called me around 10:30, after I'd had time to review 3 months of server logs and plan a complete network overhaul. Her response had been more complicated than laughter, but the end result was the same. Owen, this is crazy, she'd said. You can't just demand that I make some huge life decision in 24 hours. Why not? You made the decision to start sleeping with your ex without giving me any input at all. It's not that simple? It's exactly that simple. You're either married to me or you're not. I need time to think. You've had 6 months to think. Now you have 18 hours to decide. She'd hung up on me after that, which I took as a pretty clear indication of where her priorities lay. So, what's your plan? Jace asked, pulling me back to the present. Comprehensive system overhaul, I said. Complete data migration, security audit, and implementation of new access controls. In English, please. I'm going to destroy both their lives in the most public, humiliating way possible. Jace was quiet for a long moment, chewing his sandwich and studying my face like he was trying to determine if I was serious. Owen, I get that you're angry, but maybe you should talk to someone before you do anything you can't undo. I've been talking to someone. I've been talking to my wife. She's been too busy talking to her boyfriend to listen. I mean like a counselor or a lawyer, someone who can help you think through this rationally. I am thinking rationally. That's the problem. I turned back to my computer and opened a new browser tab. Tell me, Jace, what do you know about social media marketing? Enough to know that's a dangerous question coming from you right now. Tessa works in HR. Her whole career is built on maintaining professional relationships and corporate reputation. What do you think would happen if her colleagues found out she'd been having an affair with a married client? Owen? And Liam works in sales. His success depends on trust, credibility, professional image. What happens to his commission structure when his wife finds out he's been cheating? When his boss realizes he's been using business trips to meet his mistress? Dude, you need to slow down and think about this. But I was already 3 steps ahead, mentally mapping out the network of relationships, dependencies, and vulnerabilities that connected Tessa and Liam to their respective professional and personal lives. The beautiful thing about modern life, I said, is how connected everything is. Social media, professional networks, shared digital services. Pull the right thread, and entire systems come unraveling. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Can we talk tonight? I think we need to discuss this like adults. I showed the message to Jace, who read it and nodded approvingly. See? She wants to work it out. Maybe you should give her a chance to explain. She's had 6 months to explain. Now she gets to watch me implement the solution. I typed back, timeline stands. Choose by 8 p.m. or I choose for you. Then I opened my laptop and began uploading files to a cloud storage account I'd created that morning. Screenshots, message logs, photo metadata, location data, everything I'd collected over the past 2 days, organized into a comprehensive presentation that told the story of my wife's affair with the kind of detail that would make a forensic investigator proud. What are you doing? Jace asked, leaning over to look at my screen. Preparing for tomorrow's product launch, I said. I think it's going to be very well received by the target audience. At exactly 8 p.m., my phone rang. I was sitting in my home office, surrounded by printouts and backup drives, putting the finishing touches on what I'd started thinking of as my deployment strategy. Owen, please, Tessa said before I could even say hello. We need to talk about this. Time's up, I said. What's your decision? It's not that simple. There are things you don't understand. I understand that you've been lying to me for 6 months. I understand that you've been meeting your ex-boyfriend in hotel rooms while telling me you were working late. I understand that you've been planning a future with him while pretending to be committed to our marriage. Owen, what I don't understand is why you thought I wouldn't find out. There was a long silence. Then, what are you going to do? I'm going to solve the problem. What does that mean? It means tomorrow morning, everyone in your professional network is going to receive a very detailed presentation about your extracurricular activities, your boss, your colleagues, your HR director, everyone who trusted you to maintain professional standards and ethical behavior. You can't do that. I can, and I will, unless you'd like to reconsider your position. Another silence, longer this time. I can't just end it with Liam overnight. It's complicated. Then you've made your choice. I hung up and immediately began executing the first phase of my plan. By the time I went to bed, automated emails were scheduled to deploy at 9 a.m. sharp, targeting every professional contact in Tessa's network with a comprehensive report on her recent activities. I set my alarm for 8:30 a.m. and went to sleep with the satisfaction of knowing that tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. At 8:45 a.m., I sat in my car in the parking lot of a coffee shop 3 blocks from Tessa's office, laptop open, watching the most satisfying product launch of my career unfold in real time. The automated emails had deployed exactly on schedule. 43 recipients across Tessa's professional network, each receiving a personalized message with subject line: Professional conduct concerns. Tessa Hale HR review required. The attachments were works of art, screenshots of hotel receipts, GPS location data showing her phone at the Marriott during supposed work hours, text message conversations with timestamps, even a few photos from Liam's social media that showed him at the same locations on the same dates, all of it presented in the clean, professional format of a corporate compliance report. My phone started ringing at 8:52 a.m. "Owen, what did you do?" Tessa's voice was shaking, somewhere between panic and rage. "I implemented the solution we discussed. You sent emails to my boss, to the HR director, to half the marketing department. I sent documentation of policy violations to the appropriate personnel for review and corrective action. This is insane. You're destroying my career. You destroyed your career when you decided to use company time and resources to conduct a personal relationship with a vendor. I'm just making sure the right people are aware of the situation." I could hear voices in the background, urgent conversations, and what sounded like someone crying. "Owen, please, you have to stop this. I can't stop what's already been deployed, but I can prevent further escalation if you're ready to discuss terms." "What terms?" "Meet me for lunch, noon, at that sandwich place on Central where we had our first date. Come alone." "Owen? And Tessa? You might want to start thinking about your exit strategy. I hear the job market for disgraced HR coordinators is pretty competitive these days." I hung up and immediately called Jace. "Please tell me you didn't actually send those emails," he said without preamble. "Okay, I won't tell you that." "Jesus Christ, Owen. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "I've initiated a comprehensive audit of system security violations. Very thorough, very professional, very documented." "You've committed career suicide, and possibly actual suicide, depending on how vindictive Tessa decides to be." I closed my laptop and started the car. "Jace, do you remember what you told me when you got divorced?" "Which part?" "You said the worst part wasn't finding out that Michelle was cheating. It was realizing that everyone else knew before you did. That you'd been walking around for months being the guy whose wife was screwing her personal trainer, and everyone was too polite to tell you." "Yeah, I remember." "Well, I'm making sure that doesn't happen to Liam's wife." "What do you mean?" "Phase 2 deploys at noon." The sandwich shop was crowded with the usual lunch crowd of office workers and college students. I got there early and claimed a corner table where I could see the entrance and the parking lot. At 12:15, Tessa walked in looking like she'd aged 5 years since yesterday morning. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wasn't wearing makeup, which made the dark circles under her eyes more prominent. Her clothes looked like she'd grabbed them off the bedroom floor without checking if they matched. She spotted me and walked over with the careful steps of someone trying very hard not to fall apart in public. "You look terrible," I said as she sat down. "I've been suspended pending investigation." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "They're reviewing all my client interactions for the past year. They want to know if there are other vendors I've been inappropriately involved with." "Are there?" "No, Owen, there aren't." She leaned forward, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Liam is the only one. It was never supposed to go this far." "How far was it supposed to go?" "I don't know. It just happened. We ran into each other at that conference in Denver, and we started talking, and it felt like being 22 again. Before mortgages and careers and all the complicated adult stuff." "Before marriage, you mean? Before everything got so serious all the time." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "When did we stop having fun, Owen? When did we turn into two people who live in the same house but barely talk to each other?" It was a fair question, and 6 months ago, I might have been willing to explore it. We might have gone to counseling, worked on our communication, figured out how to reconnect. But 6 months ago, she could have brought up these concerns instead of deciding to address them by sleeping with her ex-boyfriend. "You could have talked to me," I said. "You could have suggested counseling, or a vacation, or date nights, or any of the things that normal couples do when they're feeling disconnected." "Would you have listened? We'll never know, will we?" The waitress came over and we ordered sandwiches neither of us would eat. After she left, Tessa reached across the table like she was going to take my hand, then seemed to think better of it. "What do you want, Owen?" "You've made your point. You've humiliated me, probably cost me my job, and destroyed any credibility I had in my field. What else do you need? I need you to understand that actions have consequences, and I need Liam to understand the same thing. What does that mean? I checked my watch. 12:47 p.m. In about 13 minutes, Sandra Brenner is going to receive a very comprehensive package of information about her husband's recent activities. Photos, messages, receipts, timeline analysis. Everything she needs to make an informed decision about her marriage. Tessa's face went white. Owen, no. You can't involve Sandra in this. Why not? She has a right to know what kind of man she's married to. She's innocent. She didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I. But that didn't stop you and Liam from making decisions that affected my life without consulting me. This is different. How? Sandra's fragile. She's been through a lot. Her first marriage ended badly, and she's got trust issues. This could destroy her. Then maybe Liam should have thought about that before he decided to cheat on her. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Delivery confirmation in 3 minutes. Unless you can give me a compelling reason to cancel the deployment. I'll leave him. I'll end it today, right now. I'll call him and tell him it's over. Too late for that. Owen, please, I'm begging you. Don't do this to Sandra. You should have thought about Sandra 6 months ago. My phone buzzed with a delivery confirmation at exactly 1 p.m. Tessa saw the notification and buried her face in her hands. You're not the man I married, she said without looking up. You're right. The man you married was naive enough to trust you. The man you married would have believed your lies and spent years trying to fix problems that weren't his fault. The man you married would have let you destroy our relationship while bending over backwards to accommodate your needs. I stood up and left $20 on the table for sandwiches we hadn't touched. The man you married was running obsolete software, I said. Consider this an upgrade. I walked out of the restaurant and drove straight to Liam's office. TechFlow Solutions occupied the 3rd floor of a glass office building in Tempe. I'd looked up their address, studied the floor plan on their website, and even checked out their staff directory to get a sense of the office layout. Liam worked in sales, which meant he probably had a cubicle or small office near the front of the building, where clients could easily find him. It also meant his professional reputation was directly tied to his personal credibility. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and walked into the reception area like I belonged there. I'm here to see Liam Brenner, I told the receptionist, a young woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Do you have an appointment? He's expecting me. Owen Hale, from Phoenix Network Solutions. She checked her computer, frowned, and picked up the phone. Liam, there's an Owen Hale here to see you. Okay, I'll send him back. She hung up and pointed down a hallway. 3rd door on the right. Liam's office was exactly what I'd expected. Motivational posters, a whiteboard covered with sales projections, and a desk that looked like a hurricane had hit it. He was standing behind his chair when I walked in, wearing the kind of expensive suit that was supposed to make him look successful, but mostly made him look like he was trying too hard. Owen, he said, extending his hand like we were old friends meeting for lunch. I don't think we've been formally introduced. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I closed the door behind me and sat down in the chair across from his desk. We need to talk, I said. Listen, I think there might be some confusion about... Your wife received some interesting emails about an hour ago. Photos, messages, documentation of your activities over the past 6 months. I thought you should know. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might pass out. He sank into his chair and stared at me like I just told him his house was on fire. You didn't. I did. Very comprehensive package. Timeline analysis, location data, even some photos from your social media that show you at the same places Tessa was visiting during her supposed work meetings. Why would you do that? Because you've been sleeping with my wife, and I thought your wife deserved to know what kind of man she married. He reached for his phone with shaking hands. I need to call Sandra. Too late. She's probably already called a lawyer. You snake. The words came out in a whisper, like he didn't have enough breath for proper anger. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've leveled the playing field. For 6 months, you and Tessa have been making decisions that affected 4 people's lives, but only 2 of you knew what was going on. Now everyone has the same information. Sandra's going to leave me. Probably. I'll lose the house, the dogs, everything. Actions have consequences, Liam. You made a choice to risk all of that when you decided to start meeting my wife in hotel rooms. He put his head in his hands and made a sound that might have been crying or might have been hyperventilating. What do you want? He asked without looking up. I want you to understand that you're not the protagonist in this story. You're not the guy who gets to have his cake and eat it too. You're not the charming rogue who seduces unhappy wives without consequences. I leaned forward in my chair. You're the system error that's about to be permanently deleted. My phone rang. Tessa's number. Excuse me, I said to Liam and answered the call. How's your afternoon going? Sandra called me. Tessa's voice was barely controlled hysteria. She's hysterical. She wants to meet with me. That sounds like a personal problem. Owen, she's talking about eliminating herself. I looked at Liam, who was staring at me with the expression of a man watching his life collapse in real time. Then maybe you and Liam should have considered the potential consequences before you decided to blow up 2 marriages. Please, I'm begging you, help me fix this. There's nothing to fix, Tessa. This is the new normal. This is what happens when systems fail catastrophically. I hung up and turned back to Liam. Your wife is having a difficult day, I said. You might want to head home and deal with that. I can't go home. She changed the locks. My stuff is on the front lawn. Then I guess you'll need to find somewhere else to stay. I stood up and headed for the door. Oh, and Liam, you might want to update your LinkedIn profile. I have a feeling you're going to be looking for a new job soon. I left him sitting in his office, staring at his phone like it was a bomb that might explode at any moment. Phase 3 was ready for deployment. The thing about comprehensive system failures is that they tend to cascade. One component fails, which puts additional stress on the remaining components, which causes them to fail, which brings down the entire network. It's beautiful in its inevitability, once you understand the architecture. By Thursday morning, the architecture of Tessa and Liam's lives was collapsing in exactly the way I'd predicted. Tessa had been officially terminated from her job, not just suspended, terminated with cause, which meant no severance package and a notation in her personnel file that would make finding another HR position nearly impossible. Her boss had called it a flagrant violation of professional ethics and company policy regarding vendor relationships. Liam was facing his own professional crisis. His wife Sandra had called his boss directly, demanding to know if the company was aware that their sales manager was using business trips to conduct extramarital affairs. She'd also posted about the situation on Facebook, tagging several of Liam's colleagues and clients in a lengthy explanation of why she was filing for divorce. The post had been shared 47 times before Liam managed to get Sandra to delete it, but by then screenshots were circulating through the local tech community like a virus. I was getting regular updates from Jace, who'd become my unofficial intelligence analyst despite his obvious disapproval of my methods. Liam's company put him on administrative leave pending investigation, he reported over lunch on Thursday. Apparently, several clients saw Sandra's Facebook post and started asking questions about professional conduct. Interesting, I said, not looking up from my sandwich. What kind of questions? The kind that make sales managers unemployable. Word is spreading that he's been mixing personal business with client relationships. Nobody wants to work with a guy who might be sleeping with their employees. Market forces, I said. Very efficient system for eliminating bad actors. Owen, you need to stop this. Stop what? I haven't done anything since Monday. Everything that's happening now is just natural consequences playing out. Sandra Brenner tried to eliminate herself last night. That got my attention. I looked up from my food and studied Jace's face, trying to determine if he was serious or just trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty. Tried how? Pills. Her sister found her and called 911. She's in the hospital, stable but under psychiatric observation. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not guilt, exactly, but a recognition that the cascade failure was affecting systems I hadn't intended to target. That's not on me, I said. That's on Liam for putting her in this situation. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided to use her as collateral damage in your revenge fantasy. I gave her information she had a right to have. What she chose to do with that information was her decision. She chose to try to eliminate herself, Owen. How does that fit into your grand plan? I didn't have a good answer for that. In my systematic analysis of the situation, I'd identified Sandra as an affected party who deserved to know the truth about her marriage. I'd calculated the probability that she would leave Liam, that she would be hurt and angry, that she might cause professional problems for him. I hadn't calculated the probability that she would view suicide as a viable solution to the problem. Is she going to be okay? I asked. Physically, probably. Emotionally. Who knows? Her sister says she's been struggling with depression since her first divorce. Finding out about Liam was apparently the last straw. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Around us, the normal rhythm of office workers grabbing lunch, discussing projects, complaining about timelines, normal problems that could be solved with normal solutions. What about Tessa? Jace asked eventually. What about her? Where is she staying? What's she doing for money? You kicked her out of the house and got her fired. She's got to be pretty desperate by now. I'd been trying not to think about Tessa's practical situation. She'd moved in with her friend Leah temporarily, but I knew Leah had roommates and a small apartment. Tessa's savings account was nearly empty. I'd checked, since it was linked to our joint account for overdraft protection. Her credit cards were maxed out from all those hotel visits with Liam. She made her choices, I said. She can live with the consequences. Can she? Because word is she's been calling around to other companies, trying to find work, and your little email campaign has basically blacklisted her from the entire HR community. Market forces, I repeated, but it sounded hollow even to me. This isn't market forces, Owen. This is you systematically destroying people's lives because you're hurt and angry. I'm not hurt and angry. I'm solving a problem. By creating bigger problems for everyone involved. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the park on Camelback at 6 p.m. Come alone. T. I showed the message to Jace, who read it and shook his head. Don't go, he said. Nothing good is going to come from that conversation. I can handle Tessa. Can you? Because from what I'm hearing, she's not the same person who was giggling at her phone a week ago. People are saying she's been acting erratic, desperate, making threats. What kind of threats? The kind that suggests she blames you for everything that's gone wrong and might be planning to do something about it. I considered this. In my analysis of the situation, I'd focused on Tessa's professional vulnerabilities and social connections. I hadn't given much thought to how she might respond emotionally to losing her job, her reputation, and her future prospects all at once. Another system variable I'd failed to account for. I'll be careful, I said. Owen, I'm serious. Don't go alone. Take someone with you, or meet her somewhere public, or better yet, don't meet her at all. But I was already planning my approach to the conversation. Camelback Park was public enough to be safe, isolated enough for privacy. If Tessa was planning some kind of confrontation, I wanted to control the environment. At 5:45 p.m., I parked near the hiking trail entrance and walked to the picnic area where Tessa was waiting. She was sitting at a concrete table, wearing sunglasses despite the fact that the sun was already setting behind the mountains. She looked terrible, worse than she'd looked at lunch the day before. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair unwashed, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't been sleeping. You came, she said as I sat down across from her. You said we needed to talk. Sandra Brenner is in the hospital. I heard. She tried to eliminate herself because of what you did. She tried to eliminate herself because her husband was cheating on her. I just made sure she found out about it. Tessa took off her sunglasses, and I could see that her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Do you feel good about that? About driving someone to attempt suicide? I feel like everyone involved is finally dealing with the truth instead of living in a fantasy. The truth. She laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. You want to talk about truth, Owen? Here's some truth for you. I'm broke. I'm unemployed. I'm probably unemployable in my field. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch and living off credit cards that are already maxed out. You should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair. I made a mistake. One mistake, and you've destroyed my entire life over it. 6 months isn't one mistake, Tessa. 6 months is a pattern of deliberate deception. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, which she slid across the table toward me. What's this? I asked. Divorce papers. I had a lawyer draw them up. I'm not asking for alimony or half the house or any of the things I'm probably entitled to. I just want out. I opened the envelope and scanned the documents. She was right. The terms were remarkably generous to me. She was essentially walking away from the marriage with nothing but her personal belongings and her car. Why? I asked. Because I can't fight you anymore. Because every time I try to move forward, you find a new way to sabotage me. Because I'm tired of being the villain in your revenge fantasy. You made yourself the villain when you decided to cheat. I know what I did was wrong. I've admitted that. I've apologized. I've ended it with Liam. I've lost my job, my reputation, my future. What more do you want from me? I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception, but all I saw was exhaustion and defeat. The fight had gone out of her completely. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, I said. I want you to remember this feeling the next time you're tempted to lie to someone who trusts you. Congratulations. Lesson learned. She stood up and slung her purse over her shoulder. Sign the papers and mail them to the lawyer's office. The address is on the cover letter. Where are you going? Away. My sister lives in Portland. She says I can stay with her until I figure out what to do next. What about Liam? What about him? His wife tried to eliminate herself because of our affair. His career is over. His marriage is over. He's probably going to lose his house. She looked at me with something that might have been pity. You got what you wanted, Owen. You destroyed both of us. She started walking toward the parking lot, then stopped and turned back. You know what the saddest part is? I actually loved you. Not the way I loved Liam. That was just nostalgia and fantasy and midlife crisis bullshit. But I loved you. The real you, not some idealized version from 20 years ago. Funny way of showing it. Yeah, well, you're showing a funny way of loving me too. She walked away, leaving me sitting at the picnic table with divorce papers and the growing realization that my systematic approach to problem solving had created more problems than it had solved. I signed the papers that night and mailed them the next morning. By the following week, Tessa was gone, Liam had been fired from his job, and Sandra was out of the hospital but living with her sister while she recovered. The network that had connected all of our lives had been completely dismantled. Mission accomplished. So why did it feel like I'd lost more than I'd won? 3 weeks after Tessa left for Portland, I was sitting in my empty house, surrounded by the smart home technology I'd installed to make our life more convenient, when I realized I'd become the kind of person I used to mock in IT support tickets. You know the type. The user who calls in a panic because they've deleted something important, then gets angry when you explain that they should have backed up their data before making irreversible changes to the system. I'd deleted my marriage without backing up the parts that were worth saving. The house felt like a server room after a major outage, technically functional, but eerily quiet. All the automated systems were still running. The coffee maker still brewed at 6:30 a.m. The thermostat still adjusted the temperature based on my schedule. The security system still logged every door and window. But without Tessa's voice calling from the kitchen, without her phone buzzing with messages, without the sound of her getting ready for work in the morning, the house felt less like a home and more like a very expensive monitoring station. I'd thrown myself into work, taking on extra projects and volunteering for overtime shifts. Ms. Carmody had noticed my increased productivity and mentioned something about a promotion opportunity, but even career advancement felt hollow when there was no one to share the news with. Jace had been checking on me regularly, which I appreciated even though his concern felt like pity. You look like shit, he said, rolling his chair over to my desk on a Thursday afternoon. When's the last time you went home before midnight? I go home every night. I mean, actually went home, not just showed up to sleep for 4 hours before coming back here. I saved my work and turned to face him. I'm fine, Jace. No, you're not. You're exhibiting all the classic signs of someone who's realized they made a huge mistake but doesn't know how to fix it. I didn't make a mistake. I solved a problem. By creating bigger problems. Sandra Brenner is still in counseling. Liam's living in his car because he can't afford an apartment after paying for his wife's medical bills. And Tessa... What about Tessa? She's working at a coffee shop in Portland, making minimum wage plus tips, living in her sister's spare room. One of the guys in accounting has a friend who knows her sister. Word is she's pretty broken up about the whole thing. I tried to feel satisfied about that information, but mostly it just made me tired. She brought it on herself, I said, but the words sounded automatic, like a script I'd been reciting for so long I'd forgotten why I'd written it. Did she? I mean, yeah, she cheated, and that was wrong. But did she deserve to have her entire life destroyed over it? Actions have consequences. So do overreactions. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was someone named Jennifer Morrison, and the subject line was, regarding Tessa Hale. I opened it while Jace watched over my shoulder. Mr. Hale, I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. I got your email address from Tessa's emergency contact information. My name is Jennifer Morrison, and I work with Tessa at Grind Coffee in Portland. I don't know the details of what happened between you two, but I wanted you to know that Tessa is struggling. She's a good employee and a kind person, but she's clearly dealing with some serious depression and anxiety. She's mentioned that she made some mistakes in her marriage and feels like she deserves whatever consequences she's facing, but I'm worried about her mental state. I'm not trying to interfere in your personal business, but if there's any way you could reach out to her, I think it might help. She talks about you sometimes, and it's clear she still cares about you despite everything that's happened. Again, I'm sorry for overstepping, but I felt like someone should let you know how she's doing. Best regards, Jennifer Morrison. I read the email twice, then closed it without responding. You going to call her? Jace asked. Why would I do that? Because you still love her. Because this whole revenge thing was really just a complicated way of trying to get her attention. Because you're miserable without her, and she's miserable without you, and maybe there's still a way to fix this. There's nothing to fix. The system failed, I documented the failure, and I implemented a solution. Case closed. Owen, listen to yourself. You're talking about your marriage like it's a technical problem. It was a technical problem. Incompatible systems, corrupted data, security vulnerabilities. I addressed all of those issues. By destroying everything. By preventing future failures. Jace was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was trying to debug a particularly complex error. "You know what I think?" he said finally. "I think you're scared." "Of what?" "Of admitting that you made a mistake. Of acknowledging that maybe your systematic approach to problem solving doesn't work for human relationships. Of facing the possibility that you destroyed something that could have been repaired." Tessa cheated on me for 6 months. She lied to me, manipulated me, made me look like a fool. How exactly was that supposed to be repaired? Counseling, communication, forgiveness. You know, the things that normal people do when their relationships hit rough patches. Normal people don't have affairs with their ex-boyfriends. Normal people also don't systematically destroy their spouse's life when they find out about infidelity. I turned back to my computer, but I couldn't focus on the code scrolling across the screen. Jennifer Morrison's email kept running through my mind, along with the image of Tessa working at a coffee shop, making minimum wage, living in her sister's spare room. That wasn't the outcome I'd intended. I'd wanted consequences, accountability, a recognition that her actions had hurt people. I hadn't wanted to drive her into poverty and depression, or maybe I had, in the immediate aftermath of discovering her betrayal. Maybe that cold, systematic revenge had been exactly what I'd wanted, and now I was dealing with the consequences of my own actions. "What would you do?" I asked Jace without looking away from my screen. "About what?" "If you found out your wife was cheating, what would you do?" "I'd be pissed. I'd probably yell and throw things and demand explanations. Then I'd calm down and try to figure out if the marriage was worth saving. And if it wasn't, I'd get divorced like a normal person. I wouldn't try to destroy her entire existence." I closed my laptop and stood up. I need to think about this. "Where are you going?" "Home, to think." But instead of going home, I drove to the park where I'd met Tessa for our last conversation. It was late afternoon, and the hiking trails were busy with people getting exercise after work. Normal people with normal problems, working through their issues without resorting to systematic destruction. I sat at the same picnic table where Tessa had handed me divorce papers and tried to imagine what would have happened if I'd made different choices. If I'd confronted her directly instead of gathering evidence. If I'd demanded counseling instead of demanding a timeline. If I'd tried to understand why she'd been unhappy instead of focusing solely on punishing her for how she'd expressed that unhappiness. The divorce papers were final now. Tessa was gone, probably permanently. Liam's life was in ruins, his marriage destroyed, his career over. Sandra was recovering from a suicide attempt that might never have happened if I'd handled the situation differently. I'd solved the immediate problem of my wife's infidelity by creating a cascade of failures that had damaged or destroyed 4 people's lives, including my own. My phone rang. Unknown number with a Portland area code. "Hello? Owen? It's me." Tessa's voice was different. Quieter, more tentative, like she wasn't sure I'd want to hear from her. "How did you get this number?" "It's the same number you've had for 10 years. I was hoping we could talk." "About what?" "About everything. About what happened, about what I did wrong, about what you did wrong, about whether there's any way to fix this." I looked around the park, at the families having picnics, at the couples walking their dogs, at all the ordinary people living their ordinary lives without systematically destroying each other. "I don't know if there's anything to fix," I said. "I think we might have damaged too many systems to restore from backup." "Maybe, but maybe we could try building something new instead of trying to restore something that was already broken." "Why would you want to do that after everything I did to you?" "Because I still love you, because I think you still love me, because we're both miserable apart, and maybe we could be less miserable together." "It's not that simple, Tessa." "It could be, if we both wanted it to be." I closed my eyes and tried to imagine it. Tessa coming home, both of us starting over, building a new relationship on the ruins of the old one. It seemed impossible, but then again, so had systematically destroying our entire social network 3 weeks ago. "I'd need time to think about it," I said. "I know. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that maybe we could debug this relationship instead of scrapping it entirely." Despite everything, I smiled. "Did you just use a programming metaphor?" "I've been reading about network engineering, trying to understand how your mind works. Did you know that most system failures can be traced back to human error?" "Yeah, I know." "The human error in our system wasn't just my affair, Owen. It was both of us failing to maintain the connection between us. both of us letting the relationship run on autopilot until it crashed. So what are you proposing? A complete system rebuild. New protocols, better security, improved communication channels. But this time, we do it together. I sat in the park for another hour after we hung up, watching the sun set behind the mountains and thinking about system architecture, about the difference between fixing problems and preventing them, about the importance of backing up your data before making irreversible changes, about the possibility that some failures are recoverable if you're willing to put in the work to rebuild from the ground up. When I finally drove home, I had a decision to make. I could continue running my life like a single-user system, efficient and secure, but ultimately isolated. Or I could risk opening up the network again, implementing new security protocols, but accepting the inherent vulnerabilities that come with any connected system. The next morning, I bought a plane ticket to Portland. It was time to see if our relationship was worth debugging, or if some system failures really are permanent. But that's a story for another day. Right now, I had a network to rebuild.